11:42 p.m., October 14th, Montecito, California. A digital forensic log quietly recorded a series of encrypted incoming transmissions on a secondary mobile handset registered under an anonymous corporate retainer. There were no dramatic confrontations in the hallways of the estate, no screaming matches echoing across the manicured lawns. There was only the low glow of a handheld screen cutting through the dark, displaying message threads between Prince Harry and an unnamed female media executive residing in the upper environs of Santa Barbara County. The logs revealed an ongoing, months-long dialogue. It wasn't just casual chatter. It detailed deliberate logistical arrangements, quiet meetings away from estate staff, and discussions regarding a permanent residency return to the United Kingdom. Within 24 hours, the existence of these private records reached inner palace circles through formal intelligence briefs. So the whisper this week is that Harry has found himself another woman. Secret texts, a livid wife, the whole entire lot. And honestly, the funny part isn't the rumor itself. The funny part is that not one person who has watched these two over the past year is the least bit shocked. If this institutional shift surprises you, subscribe before we get into what happened next. Hi viewers, do you think Prince Harry was wrong for keeping a secret phone, or was he just trying to protect himself? Drop a simple yes or no in the comments right now. To understand how a marriage that began as the romance of the century devolved into secret handsets and mirrored server drives, you have to look past the tabloid headlines and look at the actual records. You have to go back to the founding covenant, May 2018, Windsor. Before the global broadcasts, the official merchandise, and the California press releases, there was a paper contract, a prenuptial media and financial operational agreement signed in the quiet administrative offices near St. George's Chapel. That document formally tethered Harry's royal heritage to Meghan's commercial ambitions in the United States. It laid out the terms of his surrender. Harry plainly traded his royal allowances, his official military appointments, and his state-funded security detail for a shared commercial empire on the other side of the Atlantic. He gave up his home country for a promised fairy tale. But paper contracts only hold value as long as both parties honor the original terms. Fast forward to early 2024, official filings registered with the California Secretary of State revealed a systematic paper division. This was not an emotional split handled in a therapist's office. This was a clinical corporate separation. The joint holding companies were quietly dissolved. Meghan's personal lifestyle venture, American Riviera Orchard, was moved into an independent corporate structure. Harry's Invictus Games initiatives and his international polo projects were routed through separate asset channels. They stopped operating as a single unit and began filing as separate entities. The couple wasn't just running separate accounts. They were running separate lives, separate brands, and separate futures. The paper trail proved that long before any secret texts surfaced, the business model of their marriage had already entered liquidation. Here is what half the internet has quietly clocked for months. This relationship was falling apart in full view while the public was looking the other way. She films herself cruising through Paris a stone's throw from where his mother lost her life. She flies off to Geneva on her own, then Chicago on her own. He keeps flying back to London without her. They ran separate operations, and now there is talk of another woman. The reaction online boiled down to two simple words: saw it coming. A high-ranking estate staffer noticed the initial discrepancy during a routine quarterly audit of the household's communication infrastructure. A secondary phone line had been opened under a local offshore LLC, complete with end-to-end encryption and private routing. The billing records were being sent directly to an independent accounting firm rather than the shared family office. Meghan's team caught the discrepancy. She requested the full unredacted billing records and data logs for that secondary line. What she found was not just a handful of casual messages, but an entire hidden life mapped out over months. Every single interview, every single picture, every place they went over the past 3 years showed the exact same dynamic. Meghan grabbed, Meghan controlled, Meghan stood in front of him. She controlled every situation like she was the sole star, turning a prince of the realm into a secondary figure for her own commercial branding. But behind the scenes, the secondary figure was quietly building an exit ramp. The secret transmissions were detailed, structured, and consistent. They documented quiet dinners at private residences near Montecito, far from the cameras and the estate security guards. They revealed private discussions about legal representation in London. Most importantly, they showed a man desperately reaching out for a life that didn't involve a Netflix contract or a camera crew following his every step. The veil was lifting. Harry was waking up to the reality of the cage he had helped build around himself. By the time the sun came up over Montecito on October 15th, the digital logs were no longer private. A flagged entry in the estate's private security ledger revealed that the billing history for that offshore line had been printed and placed in a secured file. The narrative sold to the public for 6 years was that Harry had been rescued from a cold, uncaring royal system by the love of his life. But the paper trail told a chillingly different story. It showed a man who had traded an institution for an influencer, only to realize that the new structure had even tighter walls. And then came the real escalation. A late-night system notification confirmed that a complete set of high-resolution digital screenshots of those private text exchanges had been backed up to an external server outside the Montecito perimeter. The leverage had been established. The quiet, cold war inside the estate was officially over, and the public fallout was about to begin. To understand the sheer magnitude of those external server backups, you have to understand the baseline. You have to look at the ghost that haunted every square inch of Harry's new life. Long before the California estate, long before the multi-million-dollar deals, there was a completely different story. Before Meghan, there was Chelsea Davy, a Zimbabwean-born law student with barefoot ease. She couldn't have cared less about palace walls, royal protocol, or formal titles. On and off, they spent 7 years together. She was the one woman Harry ever looked genuinely happy standing next to. She wasn't playing a role, she just fitted in. I know this because Harry himself put it on the record, under oath. When he stood up in that witness box in London to take on the newspaper group, he didn't lead with grand principles of free speech. He led with her. He blamed the press flat out for poisoning the one relationship that ever brought him real peace. The detail he gave in those court documents was grim. Constant surveillance, unmarked cars sitting outside her residence. A tracking device was discovered attached to the undercarriage of her vehicle. Leaked private arguments splashed across tabloid covers like a victory score. He confessed under oath that the paranoia rotted his inner circle. He stopped trusting his oldest friends. He felt utterly miserable, allowing a dark, creeping sense of anger to swallow him whole. In his own published memoir, he went even further. He admitted he couldn't bring himself to drag Chelsea deeper into that gilded cage. He feared the press would hound her to death. Read that back slowly. The man is on the record stating he would have walked away from the entire royal circus if someone had given him a path out. The machine robbed him of the girl he loved. And she wasn't the only one who fled. The girlfriend straight after her took one look at the royal fishbowl and ran for the hills. Two free spirits. Both loved him. Both looked at his life and chose survival instead. Then came the punchline. In May 2018, Chelsea Davy sat in the pews at St. George's Chapel. She watched Harry marry Meghan Markle. She sat there in silence, smiling for the broadcast cameras, as he signed up for the exact public circus he once swore he would spare her from. He married the ringmaster and shipped the whole tent across the Atlantic. Chelsea ran from the lenses. Meghan brought a production crew. You couldn't write a crueler irony if you sat up all night trying. Which brings us directly to a formal internal security debrief from late autumn. Destination: Paris. Meghan was in the French capital for Paris Fashion Week, sitting front row at the Balenciaga show, living her best influencer life. She posted a clip to her personal digital platform, a backseat of a luxury car, nighttime lights sliding across the tinted glass, and there she was, reclined, heels propped up on the leather seat, filming her designer shoes as the vehicle cruised along the River Seine. Here is why that video exploded like an incendiary device inside palace legal circles. She was gliding along the embankment less than a mile from the Pont de l'Alma tunnel, the exact underpass where Princess Diana lost her life in 1997. Nighttime, a high-speed car, cameras trailing in the dark, and her daughter-in-law decided the elegant move was to put her feet up and shoot a shoe promotion on that specific stretch of road. Gross, grim, deranged. Her representatives claimed afterward that she had no idea where she was in the city. Make of that what you will. Either she genuinely had no clue where she was in the one city on earth her husband's mother died, or she knew full well and recorded it anyway. There is no third door. Neither option is a good look. Think about how that landed at home. This is a man who sat on global television and claimed a car chase through New York left him deeply traumatized. History repeating itself. That raw, bleeding wound is the center of Harry's entire emotional structure. And there was his wife, heels up, filming for clicks on the edge of the Seine. One royal commentator sat plainly bewildered, stating he could not begin to fathom what was passing through her mind. She wasn't in Paris for a solemn memorial. She was there for a fashion show, jolly, carefree, putting her feet up. An internal memo sent from London to Montecito requested an immediate review of public relations protocols regarding historic royal sites. The friction inside the household was no longer an assumption. It was an active file. Then came the flight logs. Private flight manifests show that less than 48 hours after that Paris video was uploaded, Harry quietly booked a solo commercial ticket back to London. He didn't notify his wife's PR management. He packed a single bag, cleared customs alone, and stepped onto the aircraft without her. Want to know if a high-profile marriage is in terminal decline? Don't read their press releases. Read their flight manifests. Take a single calendar month from 2024, May. On May 4th, Meghan boarded a private charter to Chicago, completely on her own. No husband, no children. Just Meghan running corporate strategy sessions on the far side of the country. A week later, she landed in Geneva, Switzerland. A solo keynote speech, her own spotlight, her own standing ovation. Harry was nowhere within 3,000 miles of the stage. Days after that, she turned up at a children's hospital gala in Los Angeles. She wheeled out a designer dress from years past, walked the step and repeat banner, and posed for photographers, solo again. Then came a museum gala, a pledge dinner, a tribute night for Tyler Perry. Every single time, the seat beside her where a husband ought to sit is completely empty, One security tally calculated that Harry had not been spotted at her side in over 40 consecutive days. Take the tabloid math with a grain of salt, but the structural pattern is undeniable. The woman built an entirely independent calendar. She was living every single bit of it solo. Why? Because she is a controller. She directs, she dictates, she manages the frame. When you see her body language on a red carpet, that is control on full display. But while she was showcasing control to the cameras, the physical foundation underneath her was quietly disintegrating. It cuts both ways. Harry kept flying home to Britain without her, over and over. He wouldn't even stay in official royal lodgings when he touched down. The official stance was a dispute over security details. Convenient, isn't it? The one obstacle keeping this devoted husband from his family was the exact same mechanism that allowed him to jump on a transatlantic flight and leave Montecito behind whenever the mood struck. He publicly claimed he wanted to bring the children over for a visit. Wants to, yet somehow never does. A grown prince narrating his own family's absence, praying nobody clocks the massive gap between what he says to reporters and what he does on a runway. This didn't start with a sudden revelation. 2 years prior, they quietly cut their public operations in half. A business divorce, separate social accounts, her Netflix lifestyle series, and Jam Brand over here, his Invictus Foundation, and Polo documentaries over there. Everyone politely called it a professional separation. You do not file a corporate divorce from the person you are head over heels in love with. The split didn't begin with an argument. It began with a spreadsheet. Now, let me say the part the polite commentators won't. The portrait painted by serious insiders is of a man who got swallowed whole. Major figures in American broadcasting stood on air and branded her a malignant narcissist. Those exact words, on the record. His own biographers called her the most bitter, unreconciled figure they had ever encountered. Others described a process of systematic rewiring from the inside out. Harry didn't marry an equal partner. He hired a boss. Just watch how small the man became. A prince who had to issue an official statement denying reports that his wife talks over him in his own corporate meetings. Sit with that for a moment. You do not rush out to deny a detail like that, unless it is precisely what the entire world suspects. The homesickness could no longer be contained. He wrote out loud that Britain would always be the country he proudly served. Royal watchers read that single sentence and reached the exact same conclusion. That is a deeply isolated soul, thick with regret, desperately lonely out in California, sitting by a secured handset, waiting for his brother to call and offer a way back. Friends who knew him for 30 years say the light simply went out. The warm, spontaneous figure everyone grew up watching was sanded down into a careful, anxious shadow who scans the room before daring to open his mouth. Now, what do you think should happen next? Type royal if you think Harry should return to the UK alone. Type Montecito if you think they should keep their business partnership intact. Type divorce if you believe the marriage is beyond repair. The double standard within their internal staff was stark. Harry was subjected to strict protocols regarding any independent contact with his family or the British press. Meanwhile, Meghan operated with total autonomy, utilizing shared corporate resources to fund her individual PR campaigns. The midpoint reveal uncovers the true underlying motive of this entire arrangement: sheer brand survival. When the joint multi-million-dollar podcast deal was cancelled, and studio executives began demanding individual project metrics, the fairy tale dissolved. It wasn't about love anymore. It was about capital acquisition and press control. An internal audit of the couple's shared California corporate accounts flagged an unapproved wire transfer. The funds had been routed to secure a private security detail for an unlisted address in Santa Barbara County, not the Montecito estate, an independent property. By late May, the quiet pressure campaign had reached critical mass. A late-night telephone record indicates Harry spent 45 minutes on an unencrypted line, speaking directly to a senior legal advisor in Windsor. He wasn't asking about press strategy. He was asking what legal frameworks exist for repatriating children born abroad. The call to Windsor changed the entire nature of the quiet war inside Montecito. It was no longer about PR strategy, magazine covers, or brand separation. It was about an exit strategy, and on October 16th, behind the heavy timber doors of the estate, the inevitable confrontation finally happened. No raised voices, no broken glass, just the icy, suffocating weight of two people who realized the commercial contract had reached its absolute end. Meghan had the printed phone records laid out across the long wooden table, the encrypted logs, the secondary handset statements, the unapproved Santa Barbara security transfers. She threw the papers down, framing the entire discovery as an unpardonable breach of their shared brand covenant. She accused him of reckless sabotage, of undermining her global launches, of betraying the public narrative they had sold to the world for 6 years. Harry didn't flinch. He didn't apologize. He didn't offer a desperate excuse or scramble to defend the secondary phone line. For the first time in nearly a decade, the prince stood his ground with absolute, unwavering calm. He told her flatly that his personal life, his ties to his family in London, and his desire to return home were no longer up for corporate debate. Then came the structural break. A quiet, senior legal trustee, a man who had managed royal family asset trusts since 2018, stepped into the room. He didn't come to argue. He came with a leather briefcase. He placed 2 specific documents side by side on the table. On the left, the original 2018 prenuptial operational covenant signed in Windsor. On the right, the corporate dissolution filings submitted to the state of California 6 months prior. The papers proved what both sides had known in secret. The joint venture was already dead on paper. The holdings were split. The liability clauses were isolated. The mystery transmissions weren't a reckless, impulsive affair. They were part of an organized legal plan, facilitated by an independent advisory firm in London, setting up a permanent UK residence and asset protection framework. The legal trustee looked directly at Meghan and delivered the line that froze the entire room. If his word wasn't worth the paper it was written on, when he gave up his kingdom for this brand, yours won't be worth much tomorrow if you try to destroy him in print. Silence. Absolute, suffocating silence. The leverage had completely inverted. The step behind husband carrying the bags had vanished. In his place sat a prince holding the documented paper trail of their true financial state. Meghan's personal security representative quietly stepped out of the study. He walked into the courtyard and placed an urgent, encrypted call to a high-profile crisis communications strategist in Los Angeles. The message was simple. The narrative was slipping out of their control. Inside, Harry picked up his passport. He picked up his single leather briefcase and his secondary mobile device from the table. He walked out of the room, past the security staff, and stepped into a black SUV waiting on the driveway. Not a single loud word was spoken. The car pulled down the long driveway and passed through the wrought iron gates of Montecito. Harry didn't look back through the rear window. The illusion was gone, and the exit had officially begun. What followed the quiet departure from Montecito was not a dramatic press conference. It was a cold, undramatized cascade of legal mechanisms. Top-tier family law attorneys in London and senior corporate litigators in Los Angeles immediately exchanged formal non-disclosure protocols. Asset division schedules were drafted in total secrecy. Terms were established regarding media statements, ensuring neither party breached the public unity facade before the formal filings were finalized. Joint press officers issued a brief, boilerplate statement emphasizing their mutual commitment to shared charitable foundations. The public narrative held for the cameras. Behind closed doors, the legal machinery was grinding through the final division of a joint empire. Preliminary international custody frameworks were quietly registered in court filings, establishing travel parameters for Archie and Lilibet ahead of upcoming European engagements. Look at where they sit today. Meghan remains at the estate in Montecito, stepping out for solo galas, posing for photographers on red carpets, and pitching lifestyle products to commercial buyers. Harry sits in a quiet, leased residence on the outskirts of London, reviewing legal drafts in solitude under the grey English sky. He didn't lose his old life to a tragic twist of fate. He signed it away himself with a smile, a camera crew, and a multi-million-dollar contract, only adding up the true cost a decade after the ink had dried. Did Harry fall victim to a calculated masterclass in social climbing, or did he actively choose every single step of this gilded exile? Drop your verdict in the comments below. I read every single one. If you found value in this deep investigative breakdown, hit that like button right now. Share this video with anyone who follows the royal saga, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our upcoming institutional breakdowns. Keep your eyes on the legal registry in Santa Barbara, because next week we are exposing the leaked offshore financial audit that shows the exact multi-million-dollar sum Harry quietly moved out of their joint holding account 48 hours before he walked out that door. You cannot afford to miss what comes next.